Hello, everyone, and welcome to Livre Canada Books webinar, a discussion on the virtual trade mission to Singapore. Bonjour à toutes et à tous et bienvenue. I'm Christy Doucette, Senior Programs Manager here at Livre Canada Books, and I'll be facilitating today's discussion. I'm joined by Anna Van Valkenburg, Associate Publisher of Guernica Editions, and Valérie Dupont, Director of Business Development for Québec Amérique QA International. Hello to you both. Thanks for joining us today and for sharing your thoughts and experiences. That's great. So for those who've attended our export market and professional development webinars in the past, this session is more of an informal discussion, but as usual, you as participants will have the chance to ask questions via the raised hand or chat function at the side of your screen. Si vous avez des questions en français, n'hésitez pas à les poser durant le webinaire. Let me start by giving a few details about the mission itself. A delegation of 12 publishing houses representing adult trade, children's, and scholarly publishing met virtually with publishing houses in Singapore from December 9th to 16th, 2021, as part of a mission that was organized with the Singapore Book Publishers Association. Mission activities included presentations from 11 companies, combined with one-on-one business meetings, presentations on the Singapore Book Publishers Association, the publishing industry as a whole, and the Singapore Book Awards. We also received virtual tours of the Kinokuniya bookstore and several libraries within the National Library Board of Singapore. And you can find links of those virtual tours in the chat. They were impressive buildings. Initially planned to be held in person, we were, of course, needed to pivot to virtual meetings due to COVID travel restrictions, and adapt as best as possible under the circumstances. As a result of this mission, we have also produced a list of contact information for those we met that has been published and is accessible on our website. Let me know if you're interested and are looking for that on the website. So now I'd like to invite each of you, Anna and Valérie, to talk about the Singapore market as a whole from your perspective. And of course, feel free to jump in and add a comment to each other as we go through. So why don't we start with you, Anna, and let us know what your thoughts were.
Sure, yeah. So, maybe I'll give a little bit of intro just into how Guernica started in foreign rights and what we've been doing and how the trade mission was useful to us. Maybe that would be a good segue into the topic. So we are one of those unique publishers that is both medium-sized and very small at the same time. We do around 50 titles a year, but there's 4 of us in-house. So you can imagine we have a lot of freelancers. But we decided that foreign rights was important for us. And even if we could just dedicate a little bit of time to it, we would. So we started off looking at Germany because the guest of honor position of Canada was coming up. And we did that. And then we did a couple foreign rights mentorship sessions after that. And the most recent one actually let us know that Singapore is one of our target markets. So it was really cool to see this trade mission come up. It was a perfect way for us to get to know the market and to see how we can kind of start wetting our feet and make those first steps into the market, which we're still working on, by the way. But through the trade mission, I would say it seems that the market is biggest for nonfiction, for children's books. So for educational publishers, for publishers of the STM books, science, technology, medicine, and again, children's books all the way from pre-K to high school. There's a really big market for that. I remember somebody mentioning that the main focuses for children's books right now are sustainability, big thinking, things like that. So the environment is a really big thing, which was interesting to learn about. And I think Singapore is also one of the first countries to have had kind of like an eco-sustainable library built for children. So that focus is just all across the board with publishers, with libraries, in the whole industry. But yeah, those were my first kind of, the first things that I took out of the trade mission about the market. There is space also for literary publishing. And one of the actually publishers that we made a connection with is a literary publisher. they started off publishing the best Asian short stories anthologies and kind of grew from there. Yeah, maybe I'll leave it at that, and I will let Valerie jump in.
Yeah, well, thank you, Anna, for those information. From what I gathered from the trade mission was that Singapore was really a particular market, being that they are bilingual, but not only two languages, they have 4 official languages. So there's English, Malay, Tamil, and Chinese. And when you are, let's say, selling rights to them, you would be expected to sell the rights for those 4 languages. And that this bilingualism makes it also hard on their market, because they don't have like a singular language that are theirs, let's say, like from Singapore. So they are also competing with every publisher that publishes in English and every Chinese publisher that publishes in Chinese and all those other languages that are spoken in the regions around. And I was really surprised to learn that in their bookstore, they don't have any kind of regulation of having, let's say, like only one edition of one book. So they could have the English version from America, the English version from Britain, and also, if it's a really, really popular book, also an English version of the same title from Australia. So there's this kind of not overpopulation of the book. I don't know the exact situation, but it is a possibility that the same book be present several times in the bookshop. Other than that, as Anna said, there's always a big interest for nonfiction and children, and the statistic on literacy in Singapore were really, really good, but they were saying that unlike, let's say, Argentina, they are not about, I mean, they have some interest on literature, but it's more about reading for them is more about improvement and educational. So that's pretty much the general information I gathered from the market.
Yeah, thank you. Leading into the mission, that's interesting to hear from both of you that we learned that there would be a stronger interest in children's and young adult titles, nonfiction, general literature, social sciences, etc. So was there, Valerie, Quebec Amérique has such a varied catalog from cookbooks to reference dictionaries and children's titles. Did you learn something new or something specific about their tastes in terms of content? Did they gravitate to anything in particular within your catalog?
I think our catalog is really vast, and we have a lot of kind of title, as you said. We do reference, but we don't do, like, let's say, precisely academic. Most of those publishers were really academic, like textbook publisher and math or science, and our books are referenced on the subject, but they're not specifically, I mean, in Quebec, teacher uses literature to help with teaching, but not necessarily textbook. And I had a feeling that most of the other publishers that we've met in Singapore were really more into the textbook genre, which we are not doing.
And how about you, Anna?
With our catalog, so we do also do quite a bit of nonfiction, but we don't do educational publishing per se. We don't do textbooks. And we only started in children's books. Actually, last season, we did our first children's book. So we didn't have that much opportunities to, again, pitch our, nonfiction children's books. But the one publisher that we did end up kind of making a deal in exchange with was a literary publisher. So, so it's an anthology of short fiction, actually, that they were interested in.
That's great. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about that in a bit. I wanted to ask you, Valerie, as a publisher of children's books, was there anything specific that you noticed about illustration style, or was the style similar to that you see in other markets?
I haven't noticed anything particular. I know that I mean, also in Canada, it's getting more and more popular, but manga is really a popular style there, and it has really a particular aesthetic as well. But other than that, I haven't noticed anything wildly different from what we're doing.
And we learned as a result of COVID-19 travel restrictions that the English language book retail was down in Southeast Asia since those restrictions hit Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia very hard. And that the local languages were less affected than English. And so hopefully we'll see a resurgence of that as restrictions are lifted. Did you notice an appreciation for French language books in the market, affecting opportunities for Francophone publishers in Canada?
I'm sorry, is this question, I'm not sure I understand the question. Is it related to Singapore or mostly in Canada?
In Singapore, did you?
Oh, in Singapore, okay.
Yes.
I don't think I don't think I've talked with the right people, maybe because I haven't had any feedback or anything about French language per se. I didn't have the occasion to speak with a lot of publishers as well. I reached out to many, and most of them were only there for selling, which was also kind of my goal. We're always open to buying, but since we don't do academic per se, I didn't want them to lose their time with me knowing that I would not be able to offer something for that kind of book. So I don't have any kind of feedback, unfortunately, about the French book language in Singapore.
Yeah, that's okay. I will say that it was interesting that when we saw the virtual tour of the bookstore, it was nice to see that they did have a French language section.
Definitely.
Which was nice to see. So coming back to you, Anna, I'd like to ask you both whether you've been contacted or have you pursued any particular business activity with a publishing house since our mission, or have plans to do so. And I know, Anna, that you had some successful conversations with a publisher in Singapore. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
We did, yeah. So through the mission, we were contacted by a publisher called Kitab International. And as I mentioned before, they started off as a press that was mostly digital, and they did a lot of digital content, and they were putting out the annual Best Asian Short Stories anthologies. I think they did 4 or 5 by now. And in 2022, their Best Asian Short Stories anthology is actually being edited by Daryl Wetter, who's a well-known Canadian writer as well, and he's in Singapore now. He used to teach here. So it was a really interesting book to us, and they're very, very strong, their anthologies. And it just so happened that we were also releasing our anthology of Canadian flash fiction this fall. And it seemed like, just a wonderful way to do an exchange for us to kind of, build that bridge between cultures. And that works with our mission as well at Guernica. So yeah, we're looking forward to it. We'll be putting out their anthology with us in the fall, and they'll be doing the same over there.
That's great news. And it's a really nice collaboration because it represents a two-way relationship. You're both working with each other's title, and it didn't take long for, often when we see with these missions that there's a fair amount of time for relationship building and trust building, whereas this happened in only a few months.
It didn't take long, yeah, and it was rare for us as well. We haven't had anything really that quick earlier before, but I think it was we had like a very direct, it was like a very clear book that each of us had that would have been a very nice exchange, and we both had the same motive. We really want to get our book in front of a Singaporean audience, get it into the Asian market, which we haven't been able to do, and they really wanted to get their content into the North American market, and because their book is already in English, it was that much easier. And again, because the Singaporean market or the Singaporean readers largely, speak English, it was a nice way and a nice, easy way for us to do that without the translation costs and the extra steps. So that made it much easier.
Yes, that's great. And Valerie, does QI have any plans to pursue any business activity with any of the companies, or was it more exploratory for you?
It ended up being more exploratory, I would say, because I think I've met with one publisher, and then the other one we had a meeting planned, and then something came up on his side and we were not even able to reconvene the meeting. But I exchanged my email with some of them, and for now we realized that maybe our goals were not aligning or anything, but I think most of those contacts are interesting, and I kept them in. If I have a project or if we are requiring any content that I know some of them could provide, I'll definitely reach out. But for now, we don't have anything in the plans with any of those publishers, unfortunately.
And that's always a possibility when you're
Yeah.
making new connections
Of course.
to see whether it's a good fit. We did hear from other delegates that they reported translation rights possibilities for a couple of titles and a contract for sales representation and distribution in Southeast Asia. So that was that again represented their enthusiasm towards the Canadian market. One of the meetings we had with them, one of the publishers said that they had not worked with anyone in Canada yet, and they were open to doing so. So I think that there's some opportunity there if you can find the right fit.
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to say, I have a feeling that maybe I haven't talked to the right person. It's possible. And it was also my first kind of, well, not kind, my first trade mission or anything. So it was also my first time to see what kind of contact and what kind of meeting you can have. So of course, if I have the chance to do another one, I have a better idea of what to expect and what kind of initiative I can take as well with those kind of contacts.
That's right. And so can I ask either of you, do you have a tip or a suggestion for Canadians new to this market? Perhaps it might be something similar that you take to a book fair, for example.
No, I would fear it's the same as any other market. I mean, if you know that your titles are a fit for that market, go on the Singapore Book Publishers Association website to their member directory, and they have a really nice setup there where they have like all the publishers laid out. They have the contact person, they have the languages they publish in, they have their website. It's a nice resource to look through, see if any of their interests work with your books, and just send out some emails and make those initial contacts. And I think that would go for any territory.
Yes, that's a great tip. That directory is very thorough. How about you, Valerie? Is there anything you can offer?
I don't have anything as great as Anna. I think it's a very, very good tip. And I don't have anything else than other generalities of like tip to go in a fair or trying to find the right contact. And if you're unsure, just write and be clear about your intention. Are you aiming to sell? Are you aiming to buy? Are you looking for both or open? Just to make sure also that you're not investing time in something that won't end up in anything because you weren't clear at the beginning. But that is very a general tip for any kind of business relation.
Yeah, that is that's good to keep in mind. I'll also add that there is funding support offered by key government agencies in Singapore, such as a grant offered by the National Arts Council of Singapore for collaboration with international counterparts as part of market development. So there I'm sure are translation grants within those key organizations. I'm sure if you are working or starting to work with a Singapore publisher, the association can also help guide you towards that support. So that's great.
Christy, just one more thing.
Yes.
I don't know. I know that Singapore isn't maybe that big on the international scene right now, but for any publishers that are very interested in the market, I know that they have the Singapore Book Fair that happens every spring, and they also have the Singapore Festival of Children's Content that's specifically geared at children's publishers. So if anybody really wants to penetrate that market or get to know it better, those might be things to look into.
That's right. They do have some great events, and they regularly attend the big book fairs, Frankfurt being one of them. So if anyone is planning to look into the market a little bit further and is attending Frankfurt, you should have some good luck there. So I think we can open up the floor if there are any questions. Feel free to raise your hand, Catherine. I will turn it over to you.
My mute, there we are. Thank you, Christy, and hello, Anna and Valerie. Thank you for your presentation. I have to confess that I was a bit concerned when I heard you say that the various editions of English, for example, that may be out there in the marketplace could be found in a bookstore, because that, of course, has an impact for those publishers who have paid for or licensed distribution for a specific territory. So that's more of a major issue than just sort of a passing one. Is there anything else that the that publishers said in regard to this concern?
Not that I recall. I did watch again the kind of webinar and presentation we had back in December. I watched it at the earlier this week to make sure I had some interesting information to share. I thought that was an interesting fact to share, but I don't have any more information about. They did mention it, and that it was kind of a, I don't want to say problem, because I don't remember if they qualified it as a problem, but they just mentioned that there was no regulation in that sense. So I'm not sure how it plays on their market, but I can see how it could be an issue, but I don't have more information about that, unfortunately.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Catherine. Thanks, Valerie. Any other questions?
Sorry, raise hand again. Me again. Sorry, in the light of, I'm giving my colleagues on this call a chance to think of something, but no, because I was actually thinking before this started about distribution. In the past, I used to meet with someone at London when I attended for a time, and certainly in Bologna, being a children's publisher. And so that was more related to distribution. As I said, I hadn't been aware that there was this potential issue or problem for having your market, what's the word, not pirated, but something. So were any of those publishers distributors that you can see yourselves perhaps connecting with respect to finished copies? And maybe that's a question more to you, Anna, than Valerie, but unless you could sell some of French language books in the bookstores that are carrying small quantities of French books. Did that come up at all, distribution, finished books?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Do you mean that whether it came up that those publishers are distributors at the same time?
Well, or if it, yes, I mean, some publishers are distribute as well, and they have that capacity. So I just wondered, were you there strictly looking at the, translation rights, or were you also considering the fact that you might be able to sell some finished copies, be they English, or in English or French?
Got it. Yeah, so we were mostly looking at selling rights, but again, we were open as well to both. And just to kind of go off of what Valerie said, I remember there was something about it being a problem for Singaporean publishers selling those copies. And just as an aside from the trade mission, it was also, I think, in publishers' perspective, where they were saying that, as soon as that starts happening, it ends up being like a lion's den for the Singaporean publishers, because they can't sell their own editions.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say it's a red flag.
Yeah, that's it. But yeah, we were looking at both. We don't have a direct distribution right now in Singapore. Okay. So we are looking into options. We are just starting off there. We'll see what happens.
Thank you.
Great, thank you to you both. So I'm not seeing any more questions. I do encourage you to have a look at these the library links. If any of you are interested in receiving a copy of the presentation PDFs that have some more information, I would be happy to share them with you. Just contact me after the session. And if a question comes to your mind tomorrow, feel free to send it my way as well. So as we've now come to the end of the webinar, I'd like to thank Anna and Valerie for joining us today and giving your thoughts on the market. I'd also like to thank the other members of the delegation. Special thanks to Cecilia Wu, Managing Director of the Singapore Book Publishers Association, and Ulrich Zinn, Assistant General Manager of the SBPA, and Peter Schoppert, Director of News Press, for their wonderful collaboration building a network between Singaporean and Canadian publishers. Our final thanks to the Canada Book Fund for a component of the Government of Canada for financial support for this project. And of course, we'd like to extend our thanks to everyone for listening. Merci à toutes et à tous.
Merci.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.